Okay, okay. We will move to our public comment portion of our meeting. Alan Michaelis, you can correct. Michaelis, thank you. Please state your name and who you represent.
I am Alan Michaelis, and I represent me and concerned parents everywhere, well, at least in our state. Board members, I have a baby in the NICU at Primary Children's Hospital. I have 3 older children at home and a beautiful wife still recovering from a complicated delivery. I work full-time, and I try my best to fulfill church and community responsibilities. There are many places I should be right now: home, work, the hospital, my child's classroom, but I'm here. I'm here because, like any parent, I love my children and want the best for them. The current science standards are not the best for my children. In fact, they are outdated and desperately in need of revising. My oldest boy has attended Southland Elementary in Riverton now for 3 years. He has had an amazing experience. It's been wonderful to watch him learn, develop, and grow. I have 3 more kids that will follow in his footsteps. I want the best for my kids. I can't imagine what my boy will think if he reaches 6th grade, only to suddenly stop the discovery and experimentation he has grown to love, only to instead focus on memorizing facts and theories. We need more students gathering and analyzing evidence about gravity's effects on objects with different masses, less of students memorizing Newton's law of gravity. We need more of students analyzing real data to determine how water moves through the cycle, less of students memorizing the water cycle. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, some of these science standards are so old that when they were written, Pluto was a planet, and the first generation of iPods were just gaining traction in the marketplace. Our kids deserve better than that. I understand that there are concerns, particularly surrounding climate change and evolution. As an active, faithful member of the LDS Church, I share your concerns. But I am here to tell you now, this is not just a political thing. Not to me and not to the future of my children. Follow the lead of West Virginia or even our neighbor Idaho. Take what's best from the next generation science standards and improve on them. Make them the next generation Utah science standards. As board member Hansen said in November, it's all up to us. They are our standards. I want my children to be ready for college and careers and life. The current standards will not achieve that. Members of the board, good enough in this case is simply not good enough. Please give our children, please give my children the best. Please vote to approve the committee's recommendations and write standards for science that will be the best we can give our kids. Thank you.
Next, we have Melissa Mendenhall.
Good morning. My name is Melissa Mendenhall, and I'm the elementary science specialist for Alpine School District, a large district in our state, where our constituents tend to be very conservative. We serve 81,554 students in 82 schools that teach science. A large portion of my job over the past year and a half has been to support 6th grade teachers as they have implemented the new science and engineering education standards. Now, they're over halfway through their year of implementation. I asked them their thoughts about these new standards compared to the old standards that K-5 and 9-12 are still using. These are the responses directly from them. The old core promotes acquisition of content instead of practices to reason through how the world works. Science is constantly evolving, and the old core does not address this since it has students learning facts. Students were not required to think or act how scientists would. As adults, individuals need to analyze problems and produce effective solutions. They need to argue with relevant evidence to support findings. They need to critique and evaluate information. The new core promotes these skills, and the old core is lacking. Another teacher said, I am am proud to say my students no longer think the disciplines are separate one from another. When using the new standards, I always get the comment, "This is a science class, not a math class." This was a big aha moment for me. The old core does not specifically state that students need to use mathematics and computational thinking. Yikes. We have had students believing that math has nothing to do with science. Yet another teacher in Alpine District said, "These new standards are better for students because they allow students to make sense of the world around them. They offer students responsibility for their own learning. They make skills concrete so students can apply them to other curriculums." And finally, I am knee-deep in science and my students are loving it. So am I, actually. It's hard work to get everything together and organized for my students. But I love what I am seeing in my students as they work through the new curriculum. A few teachers on their own asked their students, "What do you think?" Here are a few of their comments. "I like doing engineering projects because I get to work with groups and solve problems. We've never done that before. We get to ponder a phenomenon and ask ourselves at the end of learning about a topic. It's helped me to be better. I feel I can explain things better because of what we do in class. I don't feel I've learned how to explain things any other year." Dear board members, as you consider a vote to accept the Science Standards Review Committee report and recommendation, keep in mind that everything we are trying to accomplish in education is centered around student learning. I am asking you to please remember their words and the words of their teachers as you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi Matthews.
Good morning. I'm Heidi Matthews, president of the Utah Education Association, and I'm so bummed that the new nationally board certified teachers are not in the room because I wanted to recognize them too. They've found a path within our profession, as do these science teachers who are embracing the 6th through 8th grade science standards, to avoid what the Utah Education Policy Center has indicated is the chief reason that teachers are leaving the classroom, and that's burnout, exhaustion, and stress. Burnout, exhaustion, and stress. You know, these are the reasons that the vast majority of teachers are leaving our classrooms. And you know, but why do we stay? Why do we enter the profession? It's nice to have data to back all of this up, but this really isn't anything that we didn't already know. We enter the profession because we want to make a difference in the life of a child. And we believe in public education as a cause and our responsibility. And so our role as a teacher is not just our job, our career. It's really who we are. And that's why it should come as no surprise that the overwhelming reasons that teachers are choosing to leave is burnout, exhaustion, and stress. We didn't expect to be rich, but we did expect to be able to make that difference in the lives of our students. We expected that we would have the respect and the trust and the resources and support to fulfill this promise of public education. And when each day is spent in pursuit of the very best for our students, and each day we face barriers, it really does take a toll. And when the single most influential factor impacting the success of a student is his or her teacher, and when so many of the teachers in Utah are at the end of their ropes and so burned out and so exhausted and stressed that they make the decision to leave the classroom rather than face yet another day of falling short, we must all pay attention. And most importantly, we must unite our strength around a real solution. And you, as the Utah State Board of Education, are just the people to lead this convergence. I love that word, convergence. As I reviewed the materials for this meeting today, I couldn't help but see that there are very few agenda items today that are not in some way impacted by the severe teacher shortage in Utah. With issues of licensing on your agenda today, I reviewed the district and charter's request for letters of authorization, and the desperation to fill mid-year vacancies is palpable, especially with so many people. Okay, oh goodness. So imagine the stress and exhaustion of facing 35 students, all with widely varying strengths and challenges. as a teacher whose only toolbox to pull from is another colleague down the hall. So I urge you to assure that Utah's licensing systems promote effective experienced teachers for every student and doesn't just memorialize the crisis situation we are in now. And with regards to ESSA on your agenda and the need to report equitable access to experienced, qualified, and effective teachers, I really commend the work that we're doing on there, especially with the work led by Diana to include stakeholders and keep the focus on equity. But I ask for you to be very deliberate in maintaining the focus on that. And then I'm so sorry that I'm out of time. Oh my gosh, we have a solution, and it has to do with funding and converging on a funding solution as is proposed with our schools now could be an answer to all of these issues that are facing us. So thank you.
Vince Newmeyer.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to address you. I was one of the participants of the Science Standards Committee, and I was disappointed in several things. First of all, it really appeared that this committee was not a makeup of anyone but really educators on the inside, except for one or two. And this is evident in the fact that they all knew exactly what NGSS was the moment they walked in the room, and they, with perhaps an exception or two, had an agenda to push the Next Generation Science Standards as the primary document and as the the framework from which the science standards would be pulled from. Now, the State Board of Education has rejected, when presented clearly, Next Generation Science Standards. You have rejected them. They were snuck under the wire with a translation, or thesaurus translation, and a rearrangement of some of the concepts. But the fact is that you are being led very carefully down a deceptive road to accept these national standards, which are not what general people who are interested in education, the parents, are desirous for. As I have mentioned in the past, these standards are very heavily focused on things like global warming and Darwinian evolution, to the exception that important topics on things like electronics, the concepts of circuits, the actual biology of cells and so forth is ignored, or nearly so. It really comes down to be more of a social agenda that is being promoted in the Next Generation Science Standards, or standards that are so closely tied to them they are compatible, which is what has been done in here. So I urge you to reject this committee, because it was not a representative cross-section of what the legislature intended that committee to be. Also, I have emailed you some recommendations, both the recommendations that I handed to the committee, which I was sent, I was not in favor there with the committee, but also I sent you some recommendations of what the board should do. I urge you to consider that carefully as you are looking at some of the things before you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the public for your time in addressing us today. I didn't do the obvious, which was excuse Mark. He's not here today. So I'd like to excuse Mark. He will be back with us tomorrow for our meetings tomorrow.